Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss out! After what, baby? Come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will crush.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane.
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
So what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Deep Share, the one-on-one podcast, the Danunaki Dan show. We're all here, man.
Is this a Patreon exclusive? Is this exclusively for Patreon?
Absolutely fucking not. And we will have more joining us soon. Hopefully, Dr. Narco Longo will be jumping in the house and hopefully our friend Giant will be able to make it, but that's a maybe. So how's everybody doing?
Just woke up a little bit ago. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, I just woke up too. I got 3 hours on you, son.
Where are you at? You're on Eastern, right, Dan?
No, I'm in California.
I thought you moved over to like Montana or something like that.
No, dude. Everybody keeps thinking I moved somewhere. I didn't move nowhere. I'm still here.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
still stuck
Okay.
in Cali.
Plan was to
Yikes.
I don't know if I'll ever leave or if I will leave. Who knows? It's all up in the air still. I'm still hanging out in limbo land.
And Jock, it's like what, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. for you over there?
5 p.m.
5 p.m. in Sweden.
Yeah, been out in the forest
That's awesome.
in the morning. So
Hell yeah.
it's the
Dr.
springtime,
Narco
so-
Longo, nice to see you, sir.
Howdy, Mr. Ruse.
Rouse.
I got it right.
Or the Roos, whatever.
Yeah, either way, it's good.
So yeah, we're all joined here together for a nice, fun conversation about whatever we want to get into, really. Juan and I were talking about what the theme could possibly be to default to, but
Oh, man.
history,
Well-
mysticism, all of the above.
Yeah, what have you guys been looking into? I've got some interesting ones lately.
We talk about giants because I really like Dr. Narco Longo's last video on giants in Florida, and I recently learned of the giants of Kandahar. I think that's how you say it. Kandahar. And I wanted to ask Narco, do you think that there are still giants around, bro, or like are they interdimensional too, or are they fake and gay?
Well, speaking of fake and gay, it's good to see you again, Juan.
Nice to see you.
So, but are we going? Are we rolling?
We're
Yeah, we're
rolling.
rolling,
Yeah, we're
man.
All right.
rolling.
Well, here we go. Here's a good one. So, yes, some of that DNA lives on today. Some of the most giants you'll ever find come out of where? Ireland and Africa. Okay. So it's no coincidence these two populations have kind of like concentrated, been deposited into the professional sports leagues of America. Now let's look at the three predominantly watched American sports leagues. You have the NFL. Well, what do we find in the name NFL? Nephilim. Thank you. Yeah. We have teams like Tennessee Titans, New York Giants. There's one more that I'm missing about big people, but
New York Giants, right?
yeah. And then you've got the other ones. I mean, that's the home run right there, because that's the most watched, viewed sport, at least in America and the West. Typically, sporting events, the Super Bowl's like, Christmas on steroids. But with NCAA, if you want to twist this a little more, so that one right there is just in the name itself. With NCAA and NBA, if you're thinking Kabbalistically, you can manipulate these league names to give you similar biblical names. NBA backwards is Aben. Aben. Okay? Aben, as in Abenaki and Abenakis. Well, then you have NCAA. Well, what other word has two A's next to each other? A C and N. Canaan, right? Canaan, which is where we get the Canaanites, the Bibles.
Yep.
Okay. So Anak, you also have Anunnaki, which is Kana backwards. Anak. That's literally where you get Canaanites, by the way, is Anak backwards. Anak, Anunnaki. Anakim is the biblical name for giants, which ties in again to Abenaki. So, and that's the word that they were using for the Florida giants, the children of the dawn, they were calling them, the Abenakis.
Of the dawn?
Children of the dawn, because they're the titans of
not the dong, all right? Not the dong.
No. I see where Dan's going with this. We're talking DAWN versus DON or DAN, as in tribe of Don.
Dan.
Kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, there you go. That's a good connection.
The ethnicity that you're talking about too would be in the Fomorians and the Tuatha Dan and too.
Yes, exactly.
Same type of.
Now exactly.
Which is the Tuatha De Anu of Scythia.
It's an important distinction because in my giants video, I talk about dark-skinned giants as well in the Americas. Those tend to center around the Gulf Coast, whereas South Carolina, Northeast Florida, down to like Jupiter, Palm Beach, Florida, there was, according to legends and some of the bones, not only are they saying they're finding 5 to 6 distinct races, like not hominid species, but races, distinct races of humanoids in the Florida Peninsula alone, in the mounds, the shell mounds. So you could say how many races there were, but there was a lighter skinned race of giants that deposited genetics along the eastern coast of Florida, especially, and they tend to go by the name Abenaki. And then you have the Duhar tribe of the Carolinas, Georgia, North Florida, maybe a little bit. They would have bordered Temecula. These people had like red hair, straight red, straight light skinned, and they were Duhar sounds like an Irish name, and they were very Celtic in their practices. And the people they met with said, "Oh my God, these are Europeans,"
So when we say this word giant, how big are we talking? How wild are we getting? Because I'm curious about this. I've been looking into the etymology of this word, and it's interesting to find that in some cases I'm seeing that when you go back to like the Phoenician alphabet and things like that, this means earthborn, this giga, before the Greeks turned it into something. And what I believe they were trying to describe the planets or something like that originally in that form. But before, there's this earthborn definition to this word. And that's so ambiguous, right? I mean, what could that mean? To me, I'm making the leap to suggest that it might refer to we were here first, like earthborn as in the chosen ones, or we are the superior, like this chosen is that ones. Same idea of this original. And even in that Netflix show, I brought it up recently that the giants in the show Ragnarok, they're just people, but their giant is like status and their stature and their legend. So I'm just curious how this mixes together with, legitimate claims of like 8, 9, 10-foot skeletons, and then the wild shit that turns out to be like mammoth bones and stuff like that if you look deeper into the article.
Yeah.
And real quick, can I add something? Because Narco Longo and I have covered Juan Ponce de Leon. He was 5 foot tall. And
not even,
or for whatever, he was a very small. So if let's take that in more recent history, right? When they came over and they were seeing the Timucua, for example, that were 7 foot tall, that to them would have been a giant, because
Absolutely.
5 foot stature for a European man, Spaniard, whatever at that time was normal stature. So when you're getting here and you're seeing a 7'2" or a 7'5" guy, like that's a giant. So that's also the distinction to be made, because I just covered Nephilim on my podcast, and we're talking about 40 foot tall, right? Like 40 foot tall and X amount wide. But I also brought that up, that what if it was the interpretation of the people at the time? Like, yeah, it was a giant to them, right? A giant, but not necessarily like what we hear in the Bible, 10 foot plus, whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
usually 6'2". When I stand next to a guy that's like 7 foot or 6'5", 6'7", I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm fucking tiny compared to this guy. Because and even I'm like robust, I'm wide. But even some of these guys that are just like 3 or 4 inches taller than me are even way bigger, like in body width. And it's like
it's exponential.
I would get murdered like in a second. And I'm a big dude. So like you could only imagine like these people that are in their 5 foot range meeting somebody that's 6 or 7 feet tall with super wide body. Even a 6 foot tall person could be considered giant to them.
Yeah, and adding in the idea that even from the Bach Saga, that suggests they were breeding purposely to be as large and tough and strong as possible. That's an interesting. It roots right back to that, like the ideology that the Nazis came to, and that in the secret occult shit with the superior race shit and all that. It kind of fits in that way.
Well, in Bach Saga, they talk a little bit about giants also, but it's more of a title called Jätte. Jätte is giant in Swedish. But that was a specific deity to just go, a Jätte is one who travels far. So I would, maybe it's recommended to have long legs. I don't know. We just have the etymology there. So, so yeah is to give. So jätte. It's not more into the yeah, exactly, very close to that. But jätte is to like te also te is tor and has to do with offering and the culture aspect, what the Bach Saga is describing, very precise in detail. So but that's what we know from Bach Saga about giants, but I don't know about statue and the physical appearance.
So Saga wise, it was stature and like in the caste system.
Yeah, one jätte
status versus stature.
Yeah, exactly. But jätte is more of a title about a specific function.
Okay.
Or within the offering to the Ra or the moon, the Bach that represent the moon in this case.
Anybody want to bite?
Well, we don't need to talk about Bach Saga too much.
Not necessarily.
Narco was going to say something else. What were you going to say, Narco?
Oh, I could Bach talk all day, man.
All right.
But I would say that I think I'm always like hesitant to critique the Bach Saga, but I don't think he had the resources, and his immediate family had the resources to piece together some of the anthropology behind some of the mythology. So I think he would have always kind of erred on the side of symbolic, allegorical interpretations. Whereas if he could have seen the bones, I think he obviously could have woven that into the story too, because everywhere, they're always quick to point out blue-eyed, red hair, blonde hair in countries that they don't belong.
Yeah.
But they always seem to neglect from the Bach perspective that these people usually were over 6'6", especially in like the China, the Paracas skulls, places like that. These are tall people. In Florida, I would love you guys, I'm sure some of you have heard Tim Dents was talking to Rob Skiba, and they were talking about Jekyll Island, about the creation of the Federal Reserve, right, on Jekyll Island. Well, that was actually a Temukua burial ground, and there were giants living there, 8.5 feet tall, and they had 8.5 foot tall skeletons on display, precise in the museums, right next to Rockefeller's Indian Mound Cottage, right? And the Indian Mound Cottage, you can hear this on interview. This gentleman went over there. Tim Bentz, I think his name is. Robert Sepper posted this video too, is where I heard it the first time. But I just went through Jekyll Island, and I'm going to do a whole Jekyll Island thing. Well, they came to Jekyll Island. They were all in New York, all the signees of this whole, drafting the Federal Reserve. They all came to one place, one room in Jekyll Island. They traveled, alone, anonymously. Why didn't they just sign it in New York? Why'd they have to come to the vacation spot to sign it? Well, they signed it and they drafted it right on top of a Temukua burial mound and allegedly a blood sacrifice altar. But that's another conversation. But they went there. Think about Rockefeller's name too, Rock-a-Feller, to take a fellow and rock him, to dash him against the rock. But
I want to jump on this giant thing a little bit, and the Rockefeller and giraffe. I was doing yeah, interesting. I was doing a show called the 88, and there's a constellation called Camelopardalis, and it has to do with giraffes. And so I was looking up giraffes, and I came across the Rockefeller giraffe. There's a giraffe named after a Rockefeller. Interestingly, the GI in the beginning of giraffe is also like the GI in giant. And giant giraffes have really long necks. So I think there's something to that idea of something being elongated with a gi. So maybe small ant or giant legged ant or
Rothschild giraffe.
I don't know. Yep. Also, there you go. Sorry, wrong
ruler.
Lite. Yeah,
wrong lizard people. Wrong lizard people.
It's okay. I got my lizard people mixed up.
He sticks his head where he ain't belong.
But maybe the ant part also means or like antediluvian or
right.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. Time. With the ant people,
I think
out of the ground.
I think of Gia, like you were saying, Andy. Gia is geo, and it's kind of odd to use geo for Earth because Gia should be the original root because Earth is a feminine concept. You have Gia, so Gia means Earth, and then ant meaning tunneling, inner Earth, Titans. Right, the Titans were trapped under a hill, under a mound. Right. Well, where did they bury the American giants? Under mounds, right? And so
mounds,
ant, yeah.
Have you guys heard that
mounds or she, right?
This is a little bit of a side topic, but have you guys heard that what was it, Abraham Lincoln quote when he was at Niagara Falls that everybody quotes and highlights about he mentions giants? I'm curious if you guys have heard that whole quote where he mentions mammoths quite literally, like in the sentence afterwards, and if you guys think that that's what he was talking about, or if that's just a coincidence, man, and he's definitely talking about giant people. Like, what do you think is that about? He could be telling us in plain sight, or is he just talking about mammoth bones? Maybe we could find a quote and pull it up.
I'll find it.
All right.
Abe himself was what, 6'4" to 6'6", possibly.
Right.
So
what's his lineage?
You can also see his skeletal structure is not that of a typical Western European man. He has very rigid, almost like prototypical Cro-Magnon
Jawline.
features. He looks like a Cro-Magnon skeleton, if that makes sense.
So I have it here. If you want me to read it, it calls up the indefinite past. Let me pull up the screen real quick because I think that this is part of those kind of things where people will talk about a certain quote and only bring up a little bit of it, and then when you read the entire thing, it falls more into context. So it calls up the indefinite past, when Columbus first sought this continent, when Christ suffered on the cross, when Moses led Israel through the Red Sea, nay, even when Adam first came from the hand of his maker. Then now Niagara was roaring here. The eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now, contemporary with the whole race of men and older than the first man. Niagara is strong and fresh today as 10,000 years ago. The mammoth and mastodon, now so long dead, that fragments of their monstrous bones alone testify that they ever lived, have gazed on Niagara. So
is he talking about giants and mammoths, or is he talking about mammoths?
I think I think so, Andy. I think so. I think,
and I'm not saying that discredits what we're talking about in terms of large humans. I'm not saying that, but context is everything.
It is tongue in cheek. It is tongue in cheek. So he's withholding the the obvious message. I think the telling factor is that he put this sentence in between about how Niagara is strong and fresh today as 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, and especially the 10,000 year mark. Like, why pick that exactly? Right? That's a very specific point in time. It all falls in line with, of course, what partially seems to be a little bit controlled, but obviously truth coming out about the Younger Dryas period and what was going on then and before then.
And to add to the Jekyll Island, the creature of Jekyll Island, where supposedly Rockefeller's, was it cottage or whatever they call it, is on that mound.
Indian Mound Cottage.
Mound Cottage. Supposedly it was an altar to the Timacuas and sacrifice.
Every single building on Jekyll Island, or building as of like 1920. Since then, they've built all these neighborhoods. But as of around 1912, 13, 1920, you have every building on that island was built where a native mound once was. Where Rockefeller specifically built his cottage or bought the cottage was the one that was built directly on top of what they believed was a blood sacrifice altar.
And they refer to the Federal Reserve as the creature of Jekyll Island. They almost like some sort of homunculus. And if you think of the use of blood, because the thing about these ley lines and these points around the world is that they're used to power egregores. They're used in a strategic sense to use this energy. And now we're getting more woo-woo than already of the giants, but this is what they believe. I mean, this isn't, this is what the elites believe. And the use of blood in conjunction with it being poured on the ground goes back to something that I was looking at recently.
Cain and Abel.
So they use it as a sort of technology, and it goes back even to Judas, right, that betrayed Jesus. And when he unalived himself, the blood that poured onto the ground was right. They had taken the money he had given back, right, the 30 pieces of silver. So we have the sturdy symbology. But anyways, the point being that this is a technology that they use on the ground, and you can connect all these, if you want to believe mainstream media history, with the Aztecs and the Incas, how much sacrifice they had done, blood sacrifice, in order to appease whatever gods that they were trying to appease. Again, it goes back to that movie Apocalypto, where the shaman or the witch doctor knew what was going to go down, and he was kind of able to manipulate people into doing what he wanted, because it was like, hey, if the sun goes away, it might not come back if we don't have enough sacrifices on the ground this time. So I think that they understand this technology. I think it's a form of technology, and obviously it's on the darker side of things, but they know how to tap into it. And I think Jekyll Island is one of those places where it's not exactly on the 33rd parallel. It's kind of close to it, but it's like somewhere in the middle. And at that point in time, when they all met together, it was the most wealth ever concentrated in one place. I think it was in history. It was like all the money in the world was at that one point in that location. So if anything
Recorded history.
Recorded, if anything was ever to happen, oof, right? I mean,
I've got another one for you in terms of creature, Jekyll, jackal, dragon, serpent symbolism. Let's look at exactly where Jekyll Island is. Okay. You have Georgia and then Florida. It's right at the border between Georgia and Florida. And actually, at certain points in American history, it was actually like uncontested kind of private land. It wasn't always incorporated into a state. So I don't know if it may have been part of it. Would have been part of La Florida at one point, 1500s, and so. But after that, blah 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 blah, and then it ended up in Georgia, and that matters because Georgia, some people think is named for King George. No. Saint George, right? Saint George, the dragon slayer. Now, Saint George is always depicted on top of the dragon, trampling the dragon, spearing the dragon. If Georgia is Saint George, then what state is the dragon? Florida is the dragon. Yep. Florida is the phallus of America. So they signed this right at the male appendage, the starting point of the male appendage of America, and the dragon, so to speak, right between King George, Saint George, and the dragon.
Where's the vagina of the U.S.? Is it California?
I was just gonna say that.
The Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of Mexico is the womb. Yeah.
Yeah. The void.
The Mississippi. Mississippi would be the snatch.
So it's almost like this. What do they call it? They call it geomorphing, or what's the term that they use when they actually use the land to
geomancy, perhaps.
And it's a form of geomancy, absolutely, but they're taking like these actual places. Yeah. I mean, geomancy, taking
it would be like
everything.
geoanthropomorphism, something like that.
And then we have this. I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? We have the Jekyll spelled like Jekyll, and then I've never actually read this before, but I hear people talk about it all the time.
Oh yeah, it's a famous monster.
Oh yeah,
one of the famous universal monsters.
It's almost like a Frankenstein. What year was this put out in? 1886. Frankenstein was put out.
Frankenstein and the doctor were one person. Yeah.
Ooh.
Basically, yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
So there's that connection there. Again, back to this creature thing that lives on. I mean, the Federal Reserve is still living on, and if we want to get technical, it's a private corporation, and the etymology of corporation is artificially created persons by a group of people. So we have we have JP Morgan was in there, all these guys were in there. I mean, all the biggest names ever. And then this happened shortly after the Titanic, or was it before that they created the Federal Reserve?
Before. And then they may have signed it into practice after it sunk. I'm not sure, but they definitely.
Isn't that part of the conspiracy?
They conceived of it. They conceived of it 1 or 2 years before.
Right. So 1913, and then Titanic was the anniversary just passed, but that Titanic.
1912, I think.
I do know that the whole Titanic situation is definitely you can look into, and it's an
allegory think about
Atlantis and Titans and icebergs and shit,
and its twin ship and everything. Also,
Olympus. So the Mount Olympus, and then
damn, that's bananas.
And the old switcheroo.
If you want to believe that, though, I mean, I know that's been floating around, but it's like, how much credibility does that really have? Because there was this other one that I've seen that before. Because I was talking, was it James Cameron we're talking about giants and Nephilim and this royal DNA. Well, James Cameron with the whole Avatar, and the reason that he took so long to come out with the next Avatar is because he didn't have the technology. And the way that I've been painted that before, it's like Hollywood will take this, and again, we're gonna get woo-woo, but they take this ancient alien tech, this Nephilim tech, and they unveil it or reveal it on these movies, and they take credit for it. That's the way I've been. So the whole didn't have the technology to create this movie was they were either reverse engineering something that the aliens, and I know Andy, right?
Dude, that's fine. Like, keep the story the same. Like, we're yes, reverse engineering from X.
Yeah,
right?
and so James Cameron,
that's fine.
And the Titanic, he's the one that went to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, right? He was one of the first ones, and then we have
he's the wettest director in Hollywood, man.
Pacific Rim, where they were coming from the bottom of the Mariana Trench, from this portal at the bottom of these kaiju, these demonic giants, these creatures. So I don't know if
it's always the sea people demonized, right? Like government and cybernetics basically has the exact same definition, oddly enough, and both of them have to do with steering a ship. It's always the sea people. Yeah, man.
And that,
if you look up the definitions of cybernetics and government, they're both about steering a ship, basically. And they both come from Greek terminology, Latin.
There's an Atlantis James Cameron movie also that's on Disney, I think.
Yeah, Searching for Atlantis or something.
Yeah, they end up coming across some of those big, large stones too that Narco has talked about that they found in Florida. That's very similar, like donut holes type stones that they found off the coast of like kind of Spain, but also like Azores and Portugal, and in that area of the Mediterranean where it meets the Atlantic. But interesting, there's also a town there where they had thought that maybe was a part of the Atlantis colony, and it was called Donia, and so that set bells off for me. But there's that Dawn again, right? And then the people of Dawn, Florida. So you have this Dawn everywhere, or Dan, or whatever.
Yes.
And I think that's like the maritime culture, and where I think a lot of people kind of go wrong with this, like. People want to say like Egypt was actually in America before it was in Egypt, and everybody's black and everything. I think more so like this tribe of Dan, these people, it's more like the fallen angel story, how they came unto man and they created hybrids. So I think this is where we get the idea of the Moors, is this god race mated with the native giants and created these Nephilim, which in turn is like the hybrid Moors. And that's why you get the different colors and races of like pirates too. If you get into pirate stuff, like there's all cultural, there's all kinds of different cultural aspects to pirates. Like they were seafarers first and foremost, so it didn't really matter what race or creed that you came from. If you were a seaman, you're a seaman. And so I think as they travel around, they start to mate with other locals in different places, and you start to see like this hybrid type of race, this Nephilim type of race, grow into different cultural aspects and different racial ethnicities.
Lots of red hair among pirates too, historically.
So I wanted to put this up, Narco. I don't know if you've seen this. This book is called The American Nations, on outlines of a national history of the ancient and modern nations of North and South America. It's a fucking mouthful, but they talk about Florida in here, and a lot of it's really tricky to read because I don't know if any of you guys are aware of why S's looked just like F's back in the day. But my God, it's tricky to read through this stuff.
You just do it with the Monty Python accent. The river Mississippi.
But they're talking about where Florida got its name.
Part 2.
Yeah, I was starting to get into that just a week ago. I haven't finished it yet.
Pretty funny.
But yeah, I don't know if you ever looked into this at all. It's talking about Florida and where it possibly got its name, and it's mentioning this word fac. I can't even pronounce it here. I don't know if you guys can see this well. Yeah, which sounds very
Aquaza, but the
Mexican.
Spaniard made the discovery of it on the Palm Sunday by them called the Pascua de Flores. They gave it the name of Florida. So it's talking about the Pascua. Pascua is, what is Pascua? That's a Passover,
It means,
no? Pascua?
Yeah, and yeah, it's like a feast.
Yeah, Easter.
Festival.
Yeah.
It's Pascua or Pascha, Florida. It's the same in Greek, Pascha, Florida. Pascua, Florida, Pascha, Florida is the holiday that they named Florida after. But there's two stories. Some people say it was Easter Sunday. So it was Pascua, Florida for the celebration of Easter, or that they landed there and it was so flowery. They're like, oh, Florida.
Pull that back up, Andy, real quick. Pull it back up real quick, because he's
sure.
talking about Ferdinand, which was Christopher Columbus's son, right? Right there. So in 1512, John Ponce de Leon, a Spaniard, landed there, but for want of a sufficient number of men, but returned, and another Spaniard, Ferdinand de Soto, never mind. So there's a connection between Christopher Columbus and John Dee, and then there's another connection which was really interesting with Rockefeller and John Dee, because Harkness was one of Rockefeller's silent partners. And if we connect this all to Florida, because it's all connected to Florida, these were the most influential people in Floridian history, where they helped establish, right? They pushed that last frontier through the use of the locomotive, which the locomotive is very alchemical, right? Very alchemical. The steam, the process of heating things, burning. It's a furnace that's literally rolling around. So the Harkness connection, it was a silent partner of Rockefeller and their whole Standard Oil thing that they had going on, right? And Harkness is actually a very famous, not only are they connected with the wolf, the key, the scroll and key and the wolf's head at Yale, but we also have a connection with Harkness is a very famous John Dee esotericist. And she's coincidentally, and I'm not trying to throw shade or anything, but she's found like all these lost manuscripts of John Dee where no one was ever able to find them for like years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, boom, she finds like two, one right after another. It's like weird, but the Harkness name is connected to this John Dee, and she's translated many of the works. And it's just reminding me of how John Dee and Edward Kelly were trying to quite literally bring forth the Ragnarok, bring forth the apocalypse, the end of the world. And that's a very, in Liber, I think it's Liber 474, where if you want to believe Crowley, right, we can get into Crowley, he talked about how the universe needs to be destroyed, but not the universe that we think of it as in the mundane existence of man, but this other universe, right? And it's connected to the tree of life and all these things. But I just find it interesting that these people, and then you have John D. Rockefeller, they're all connected in some sort of, and I don't know if it's on purpose or if it's like subconsciously that these elites are doing this. They know for a fact this is what they're doing in some sort of magical way, or if it's something outside influencing, from the outside looking in, influencing these people to do these things.
Like synchronicity and consciousness, how it's just kind of happening without us knowing it. We're weaving a fabric. We're weaving the fabric of a story with our independent actions, whether we think so or not.
Well, I think of it of entities on the other side influencing on the way in, but then some people are like, no, that doesn't exist. That's too woo-woo. It's too
some people
too Christian-y.
Well, I mean, you could think of the entities on the other side as that internal, open consciousness influence, that, whatever, you can call it God, you can call it aliens, you can call it whatever entities you come in contact with. Consciousness needs to subjugate itself. It needs to like subjectify. It can't, it needs to look in a mirror basically to exist. So it's like you can call it whatever you want, but we're getting it like reverse engineering alien craft. That to me sounds like an artist painting a picture and saying, yeah, it was divine inspiration. Like you're tapping into whatever you want to call it. I think the public facing side is a psyop and they call it aliens, but I think it's tapping into a deeper part of consciousness, perhaps, and that can be labeled as many, many things.
The bicameral mentality, until what year was it till what time, right? 3,000 years ago? Can we really believe that?
Well, when the brain could talk to itself?
Yeah, and then people would interpret that as like some divine intervention or the voices of the ancestors, etc.
Well, maybe, but maybe when it was happening, they didn't interpret it that way. And maybe the language was appropriated over time, and then we started to think of it that way. That's what I talk about with like the fairies and stuff. I think the people that originally were talking about fairies knew exactly what they were talking about. They were talking about these fair people, but the story, the language gets obfuscated, it gets changed, it gets embellished along the way. We see our words changing all the time right in front of us right now, and definitions in friggin' dictionaries changing. I mean, that's very blatant compared to
what is a woman, Andy?
Hundreds of years or thousands of years of the evolution of terms. I mean, one embellishment, one sarcasm, thousands of years later, who knows? The whole religions could be built around it.
Yeah.
What does cleave mean?
What does Canada mean? Because that sounds like Canaan.
Canaanites. Canaanites, Dan. But cleave means
split or sever, no?
To chop something off, but it also means to grasp or hold on to. So it's the two opposite meanings in the same word. Yeah.
Right. Well, Jock, we've talked a lot about like inversion and how it's not necessarily always used as like an evil ploy or something. It's kind of like embedded into a lot of different aspects of culture and language and ways to get messages across and things like that.
Yeah, it seems to been a warfare around language a lot. I can see it in Swedish history. When you look at the older books, you can see that the language has sort of been restored during certain times, and we're sort of left off with a more original form of Swedish than we had like 300 years ago, 400 years ago. So it's quite interesting to look back, and if you look back to like 1200 after Christ, it's even more like perfect. So it takes a lot of time to destroy a language before, or corrupt it. But the Templar seems to have been working so to hide something in plain sight. The symbolism is always like a flip of a coin also. I
would love to get into the Templars.
To be appropriated into the culture. I mean, for example, with the military and all of that the Swedish Empire came up with this military system with private captain, this ranking system we use today. If you turn it 180 degrees, it's a pagan structure to make children also instead of killing people. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, can you break the word military down with root
meal eater?
Meal eater.
A litter mill, like a puppy mill.
A meal eater, like meal. A meal is that's an English tradition for you, but meal eater is in Swedish becomes much more complex. But all those ranks have a different function within a pagan system also. That one is a helm of 10, and then a soldier is a soldiere, as a sun drinker, for example. Sol.
Now, can I give you another one on the soldier?
Oh, that's dope.
From the English language. Do you know what else happens in the process of baby making? The first thing that happens when a child is born, at least in America, in many countries, is that they dye the soles of the feet. So the foot soldier, who would have been very low ranking in this baby producing system, would have been dying. He would have been assisting in perhaps the baby making process somewhere along the line. He would have been the man responsible for when the baby comes out, dyeing the sole of the foot of the baby to imprint on the birth certificate. Now, I'm not saying they had birth certificates back then, but the foot sole dyer.
Wow, I like that. And just to connect it, to keep it with that, like maybe they did have birth certificates in a way. I mean, I don't know. Like, I connect the idea of this whole law of water and like the maritime law and stuff like that. I've been trying to look into factual evidence for this stuff rather than just Jordan Maxwell videos, but like it's few and far between. But I connect that shit right to, I mean, the whole symbolism of it brings you right back to the seafaring tribes again. You bring to the seafaring symbolism. It's all about the birth of the ship and all that.
You know,
the seamen.
Yeah.
The Navy.
Real quick, Longo. Real quick
Sure.
before this escapes, because this is something that I've been because you just unlocked it in my mind, Andy. But this is something that I've been toying around with, that right, because I just went on a cruise. What's a cruise? A boat, a vessel, right? And you have these seamen, right? And what's an alchemist doing, right? I mean, if you think of Noah being this great alchemist, right, having the vessel to transmute like reality, right? And we're talking about that connects to the Nephilim and how the Nephilim were wiped out, etc., and two of every animal. Well, there's connections to be made between Noah being this alchemist and the vessel symbolism, because it links to like these. I've seen plates, and one of the ones that I saw was in the Rosicrucian, right? The Rosicrucians were trying to manifest humanity into something else. Well, in the main plate of the Rosicrucian, the invisible college, the one that we always see with the, I think it's called the something tomb, where it's like this weird, crazy looking building. Well, on the left-hand side, if you notice, there's a mountain. And on top of that mountain, there's a boat, Noah's Ark, in this Rosicrucian plate that when I was looking at it, I was like, what does that have to do? And now you're talking about like the seeding of humanity all throughout the globe, right? For those that want to believe in the globe. And the vessel, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. The seamen, right? They're in the vessels and they're going around fucking the world into existence.
Usually tracing the Gulf Stream too. Usually,
absolutely,
most of the yachts.
Mother womb, nice. My bad. Go ahead, Longo. I'm done ranting.
Okay,
that was good.
Okay.
I think it was a good addition. It ties it in. Yeah.
I heard something recently that was talking about how there was like I think it was Ralph Ellis talking about Mount Zion and Moses going up to the top of the pyramid in Giza. And there was at one point a platform on top of there where they would do their rituals. And so maybe the ark landing at the top is the symbology, the ritual of which they were trying to recreate or perform by going to the top of the mountain or top of the Mount Zion.
That's what ziggurats were.
This idea of there's always this idea of going to the top of the mountain for some type of enlightenment or type of.
Am I reaching to connect Ark with Arctic?
No,
and being at the top of the mountain, top of the mountain.
It is the Ark.
You know, Hyperborea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hyperborea.
Ooh, I got Hyperborea to me is Hibernia, and Borea is Iberia. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that, and it's led us
it doesn't
places.
It doesn't mix. It doesn't mix with like the map that you see of the four lands and it being Hyperborea, but
maybe not now.
Linguistics, it does. But also, like when you look at the Hyperborea map, it's surrounded by mountains, and that's usually associated with Atlantis. So
this is the plate that I'm talking about, where you see here. That looks like Noah's Ark to me. And this is from the
might as well be.
Definitely.
Yeah.
1618, I believe it was, and this is called the Temple of the Rose Cross, 1618.
Look at that. It's like a traveling church.
Where is it from?
Church
yeah,
on
it
wheels.
does look like a traveling church.
So right here, the representation was created
Gypsies.
in 1604. Spectrum Sulficum Rose the Taura by Theophilus.
Whoa.
Weghart. Sounds German.
Yeah, it's probably German. Look at the picture, the lower image caption. And it goes on to say, Jesus is everything for us, right? And I connected this to this other alchemical work of, obviously, Edward Kelly, where he's showing the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone And at the very last plate, once you reach the magnum opus and you unlock the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone, let me pull that up here. He shows this. So this is the Philosopher's Stone, right? And you obviously have the Janus connection there with the three faces and all this stuff. This is a vessel. You have the first egg, the Orphic egg, and then you have the two of every animal in this picture. Obviously, there's lines and stuff like that, but look at this. And then you're on the sea. So talk about a vessel on the sea somewhere. Again,
a bearded white guy.
A bearded white guy, bearded white dude. Yeah, absolutely.
With that pointy
in the
hat.
beginning of the Bible in Genesis, it says that God moved over the waters.
Maybe it's Noah.
Yeah, well, that's again, it was very interesting to me. And
that's the shore of Gotland.
Romy had said something about the salt water, right, being according to the alchemical process and how important that is. And I forgot exactly what he said, but I just found it interesting that you have the animals, and then you have the Rosicrucian. So that's something I'm working on. I'll come up with more evidence, if you will, but
yeah, I mean, then, Jock, you mentioned the Gotland story, but isn't Noah in that story a female actually?
No, Gubben Noah.
Or am I thinking Moses?
Each midsummer we drink to the honor of Noah.
Gotcha. I was messing up the Moses interpretation.
Oh yeah, Moses is a female. In Finnish box saga.
Really?
Yeah, man. Which is that inversion again? We could possibly say, from one culture to the other.
I've made one with Caleb and Nova Scotian. He goes his name after, and we talked about this Egypt connection with they are talking about the statues are being very female in Egypt, like Akhenaten, for example, and I'm sort of into the theory that comes a little bit from the book Saga too, that they wanted to destroy the female aspects in Egypt. For example, the Sphinx there was destroyed by Napoleon, parts of it, like the tits on the Sphinx and so forth. But that's another story. But Moses is supposedly had been there. I mean,
that's funny because there's pictures. There's all these Venetian palaces, Venetian, Finnish, Venetian, Venetian palaces all over Florida. And two of the most magnificent ones, Villa Vizcaya, who's John Deering, the guy who we get deer, John Deere tractors and stuff. And then you have, this one's good. This one's good for the box saga too. The other one is Ringling Brothers, the Ringling Brothers, circus, the Circus Brothers, the biggest circus on the planet. Ringling Brothers. They were headquartered in Sarasota. Now that's Finnish, isn't it? A little bit.
Ling is actually interesting because the original king line of Sweden was called Linga or Lingaet.
That's they're Ringling.
Yeah, ring.
You're dingling. Yeah.
But also the Ling is the original kings of the Ringland.
Lingus, Lingam. Yeah.
Of course, we have the circus aspect from the root language as well.
Yes, the circus plays a big role in the Bach saga.
Yeah.
But this is Villa Vizcaya. Now that's a limestone ship called the Cleopatra. Cleopatra's boat.
Get the fuck out
now,
of here.
If you could see this from above with the glass over the courtyard, if that were gone, this is actually a 4-walled starfort with a bastion in each corner. And they turned it into a Venetian. Oh, click on that, the pool right there, underneath, please.
This one?
No, there was that's a good one. Yeah.
Monument there.
There's this whole internal water grid, energy grid system.
Wow.
With the fountains, and it's built right into the swamp. That's tapped into the aquifer, the Florida aquifer. So, but basically, why I brought it up was because in this palace, Vizcaya, and in the other palace, Sarasota, Ka Dizan, which is Venetian. Well, Ringling was German. Why did he name his house in Venetian? Well, but in both of these places, they have Sphinx statues, but the Sphinxes have breasts. The Sphinxes have breasts, and their nipples are covered with flowers.
Interesting.
This is Kadazan. They're both Venetian with a V.
So modern onlookers will say, "Oh, that's such a disgrace to an ancient statue." Little do they know, it's the original form.
Yeah.
In the tarot, they also have it on the chariot, I know.
Yep.
Nice.
So today we are actually having on our show talking to Ralph Ellis, and I just finished one of his books that's called Cleopatra to Christ, where he talks about his idea or theory or whatever you want to call it, hypothesis, is that Cleopatra's her granddaughter Theamusa, who was the product of Cleopatra and Caesar having a baby, Theamusa is the Virgin Mary. And there's this aspect, so where you mentioned the Cleopatra ship there, you have this aspect of also the Mary has a representation to like Isis and Ishtar and all the goddess angles, right? Which gets into like the Immaculate Conception thing too, because there was like an Isis cult that was having these Immaculate Conceptions in pagan times. And so there's this idea of creating these like avatar beings and whatnot. But it kind of gets into Columbia also. And so Christopher Columbus would have been Christ, and Columbia, which would have been the merging of the two, which connects into like Jesus and Mary from Egypt and them running away. Now, there's some interesting Egypt-Irish connections, and another one that Ralph Ellis talks about is Akhenaten and his daughter, I believe, Scota, and how they go to Scotland, right? So there's a connection to Scotland and Egypt. And then I was watching a video by Kuramiu Ahau, and he was going over like some tribe of Dan and tribes of Israel stuff, and there's another connection to a princess named Zara, who was of the tribe of Judah but got casted out before the time of Assyrian takeover, and she left and fled to Northern Ireland. And what's interesting about that is in the story, this baby sticks his hand out of the vagina and they tie it with a scarlet thread, and it ends up pulling its hand back in, and it got breached, and the other baby comes out first. So they had a dilemma of who was going to become the king or the princess, or who was going to have the lineage, right? So ends up being that the one with the scarlet hand had to leave and go to Northern Ireland. You see images of the scarlet, the red hand there tied with like a thread around the bottom. So they go to Northern Ireland. So now you have two connections already with Ireland and Scotland and Egypt. And then you have the Tuatha De Danann, who in I think it's George Massey, his book, he talks about how the Tuatha De Danann also relate to the Duat, or the underground in Egypt. And it was called like the Duat de Tannen or something like that. And so there's a connection of the Dan in Egypt, and then obviously in Denmark, and obviously in to Tuatha De Danann and to Ireland, back to Ireland. And then there's the story, where they like met up the two sides and were like, hey, how come you can speak the same language I speak? It's like, well, they came from the same place at some point in time, and so they have this language similar. So there's three different connections right there with all of this. And I've been going over like lost gospels lately, and in the Gospel of Paul, I'll just let me find this and read this real quick. But in the Gospel of Paul,
it's funny you're bringing this
sorry.
up, Dan, because I just finished the Judas Goat, the substitution theory of the crucifixion, where it talks about how Jesus was swapped out with his twin brother, which was allegedly Thomas, and the T of the cross is symbolic of T for Thomas, and how they talked about that. They talked about how back then the firstborn, where it was twins, the one that was first to come out, they would tie that string on it, and that would be the heir. But there just so happened to be that it would get sucked back in, and the second brother would come out first, therefore cheating the other brother of being the heir. And they would grow up not knowing that that was the case until it came time to take over. And they were like, wait, what's going on? So we have this conflict between the two brothers that happens. But yeah, they talked about, Twyman talks about it. Yeah.
So I have it here. Here's two verses from the Gospel of Paul. It says, because he had heard in Phoenicia that some of the children of Israel around the time of the Assyrian captivity had escaped by sea to the islands far away, as proclaimed by the prophet and called by the Romans Britain. And then a couple of lines later, and it says, and it came to pass that the certain of the Druids came to Paul privately and showed by their rites and ceremonies to prove they were descendant from the Jews, which escaped from bondage in the land of Egypt. And the apostle believed these things, and he gave them the kiss of peace. So
what is this?
Britain comes from
that's from the Gospel of Paul. So regardless of if Paul is canonized or not canonized, it's obviously an older text. So the fact that they're even talking about it in the first place, to me, is like evidence that there's something going on there.
I know that the supposedly Britain was named after a Phoenician term that meant land of tin. So the Phoenicians were trading there in Cornwall, which was the first place that the trading was going on with tin. And Cornwall, of course, is also where the Pictionary was.
I've heard lots of names for how Britain got its name. There's another guy named Brutus.
There's also Bridget.
Well, both of
and Bridget. So there's like so many. I bet
they can connect together, I'm sure.
Yeah.
See, names are never so one-dimensional.
Right, exactly.
What was that you pulled up, Longo? What was that?
Here, I'm trying to pull it up again.
In what moment do they go from England or England to Britain?
Yeah.
Cimmerioglyphics. This is, it corroborates what Dan is saying. It's Welsh. Okay, Egyptian hieroglyphics is taken from Welsh. There's two high old root languages on the planet. I know the Bach Saga glorifies Swedish, root Swedish, Finnish, and then English as the top three, and that's good. But we've got to add one more to that list: Welsh. What two languages was it that J.R.R. Tolkien used to construct his old world mythology? And he wasn't so much imagining, he wasn't creating fiction, he was distilling mythology into fiction that could be digested today. Well, he used Finnish, of course, and he would have been using a lot of the Swedish as well, not just the modern Finnish, but he used Welsh. Now, why Welsh? Because Welsh is the wellspring of languages, the wellspring. It is a wealth, okay? And where you have all phonetic languages go back to Finnish, phonetic, Phoenician, phonics, right? All hieroglyphic languages were interfaced to runic-based writing systems with Welsh. This is a fact. Welsh is the pictographical equivalent of Phoenician. It could be interfaced at any country with a pictographical language. So in this case, it's Egyptian. And where do you find the most gypsies in Egypt, right? Well, where else do you find gypsies clumped up together? Well, yes, but Ireland. Ireland is famous for their gypsies. And the Irish travelers. And here you have this book. I learned about this from a gentleman named Ross Broadstock. He was Welsh. He is the go-to guy for this information. He wrote this book, and it was using the works of this guy over here, Alan Wilson, okay, and a couple other guys. Well, this book is a home run, but Ross Broadstock here dropped dead live streaming on YouTube. Damn. Now, I don't know how healthy he was, and I'm not like theorizing, but his work that he was in the middle of unveiling was cut short, and he literally had a heart attack live on YouTube. So what? his work seemed to be pretty on the money, and he can read Egyptian hieroglyphics, dare I say, better than anybody, using the Welsh language.
It almost
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'm taking this into a kind of a weird psychological human behavioral type place, but it's interesting to think that like you have the analytical side and the pictorial side, where you have like these two, almost you could say root languages aside one another that are just different sides of the brain operating almost, where you have this more logic, and then you have the picture. And I think that probably speaks volumes about like the central feud of humanity, probably the difference in ideology at the core of it.
If phonetics comes from Finland or the Phoenicians, where does pictures come from? From the Pixies, from the Picts.
Yeah.
From the Picts,
there was a Norwegian professor who was studying language, and he said that there was two major language groups on the planet, and the more Finnish, I would say, he claimed that one of these types were two-dimensional, and the root or the Germanic language group is more three-dimensional in the cognition. How we, I don't remember
if I can tie that.
I don't remember the name of this guy, but it's a quite interesting read.
Yeah, I'm always wondering if we could tie that to like, the old versus new idea that I bring up often, like, sticking with the natural world and staying in that closed cycle, or the new world, the new way, the branching off, the escape from the old patterns, 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions.
I've two more things to connect, and that is the stone of destiny, or Jacob's pillow from the Bible, is also was transported to Ireland and put on top of Mount Tara.
Yes.
Where they crowned and christened kings. So Tara. So that word made me think of like Tartaria, and so I looked up like what tar meant, and tar means tree. And then Tara means star. So tree and star. So where do we see like the imagery of symbolism of tree and star, like a Christmas tree, right? The star of Bethlehem. There's a connection to Isis with that star too. And then also like in magical fairy wands, right? We have like a piece of a branch with a star on it. So there's an interesting connection to Tartaria, the mounds, and Tara. And I think that Tartaria is like the Tara territories, which is like all the encompassing lands of the tribes of Israel.
Real quick before I forget, you're saying tar, but what about Tor and the E in root language? And
it's female also.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, well, they mean tree. So
tar is inside of the tree.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The tar, I can, they have a title in Finnish that is called Kuninga Atar, for the high woman, or because she takes. She takes the seed. she,
Is this why it's Torah? Is that why they call it a Torah?
Well, that's why I was connecting it to Thor, like Thor's hammer, the tree, the trunk, like, and the star above. That's why I meant the E, the
North
little,
Star too,
the lowercase I in English.
And this is about Moses
for the root
too,
language,
and the burning
Polaris
bush
and the North Pole.
That could have been a tree. I mean, I don't know, man.
Tree symbolism seemed to be
I think
repeatable when it comes to paganism. It's all like
yeah,
different details in just the leaves. You can see it in the when you look at the heraldry, and so it's so much details into. I think that the secret when you try to unlock, you know, the secret behind the especially like 1600s, what do you call it? Like weapon shields and heraldry. The secret is inside of the deciphering of the nature, you know, the leaves and trees and all of this kind of symbolism. And it's really hard to figure out when you don't have the pagan aspect, because they were still around, those who knew about this kind of symbolism.
Yeah, using it in plain sight.
Yeah.
And you were talking a while about, you know, we've gone over it on our shows, Roots of Creation, sometimes about the Gustav Vasa and like the, you know, returning of the pagan ways and how they were kind of being used, you know, hiding in plain sight when they kind of took back the throne in Sweden. And I'm curious if, I can't remember if you said they ever got overthrown, or if that's still what's going on today.
There were forces from France with the same movement of the Napoleon age, that they went infiltrating via the orders. Sweden had their own order called Seraphimer Order, and is the highest. The Seraphim Order of the Seraphim is the highest like Templar order in Sweden, and it was controlled by the king. So they had like parties and masquerades with those people also, but they were infiltrated this way via forces from France called the Illuminists. And this Adam Weishaupt story and all of this is in the same branch.
Okay.
But it's interesting, this turning, because this Rockefeller types and Wallenberg and Rothschild and all these types seems to belong to the same network. Like the fake Jew.
Lizard people, it's okay.
Yeah, it's like the fake Jews, I would call them, the Russian Jews or something like that.
Hey, Jock, what do you think? What do you know about this symbol? You see this?
Where is this from?
Well, you tell me where this is from.
I'm thinking like it's a part of the offering on the female side, perhaps.
Well, I'm just saying this is like a typically Finnish or Swedish symbol, right?
Yeah.
Northern European. This is found in Florida, or at least exact replicas are found in Florida. This one might be Mississippi or Tennessee, but this is Mississippian culture, Southeast United States.
Well, they have the medicine wheel there, or the rusty.
The four cross, the looped cross is the kind of the unspoken national symbol of Finland. Is the looped square,
and the 8 pins. It's like the 8 powers going out from the rusty.
Four winds.
You've got
Thor's.
Yeah,
Thor's cross in the middle.
Yeah, it's a rusty, or the information center, Ringland Center.
And it does look like the female side, because they have like the swans going around the edges.
These woodpeckers, 4 woodpeckers are rare Florida woodpeckers, and they're making a swastika. They're making a sun wheel by looking each direction.
The wheel.
Now this symbol exactly comes out of Swedish and Viking stone carvings.
Yes,
well, why?
Found similar, yes.
Yeah. Now this in Florida is unlike any other American artifacts, but they find these in Florida and
what's that?
Southeast United States, like I said.
What do you know what it's made out of?
It's a shell. This one I think is shell.
Oh wow.
Carved shell. like the size of the palm of your hand, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe a little smaller, like a necklace.
It's interesting you have 3 ways. I don't know exactly where to put that.
Well, here, you guys want to look at, if we just look at, the looped square at Wikipedia, it's a very interesting symbol because it's one of the few symbols that Apple chose to put on their keyboard.
Oof.
It's
I see I know what you're talking about.
It's the command symbol. So you're commanding, commander, right? Mississippian culture, like I said. But you've got Finland. It's most famous with Finland, and Gotland, Sweden, of course.
Is it used as a talisman, Longo?
You guys still see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Just the same symbol, yeah.
So that's the looped square, but they have even more precise cheese molds. They used to put it on.
How big is that?
It's like a pendant for a necklace.
We're still looking at the pendant, Longo.
Yeah, you
are? Oh, I'm sorry. I went to the loop.
Frozen or something.
Here, let me go to the other one. I'm a noob.
How big was that?
There you go.
That shell one. Was it just a necklace size type thing, or was it like?
If I had to guess, it would have been hanging on the chest, so it would have been anywhere between a dinner plate and like a silver dollar, if I had to guess.
Okay.
Because it would have been sometimes sometimes it'd have something big, but it would have been like a charm for a necklace. But then it's interesting they decided to put it on the Apple on the computer.
Just like the Bluetooth symbol is
it's
also has Norse roots.
Yeah,
this is
King Bluetooth.
This one comes out from the Lumelunda grotto. You can see it in the style.
Yep.
Yes, you see there, Gotland, Visby.
Lots of serpent imagery.
Yeah.
So this was used to show. It says place of interest at the top of the definition. So it was like used to show a significance of an area, or
I don't know.
That would track, especially if they're talking about the Holy Land in the center.
Yeah,
but I think this may have even
But this 4, yeah. It has to do with offering to Ra or Moon, this 4. If you see a 4 clover, for example, in Ireland, that symbology has to do with female offering, for example.
Wow.
Yes. Yep.
That's why.
And I mean, Eve took the bite of the apple, so it makes sense that Apple would put it on their computer.
It's the command key. Command.
Command.
Yeah.
It always goes back to the semen aspect of everything, right?
You have the keys to Florida. Now, you know, if Florida is the phallus of America, what is the E coming out? It is the keys. The keys of Florida. The Florida keys.
Coming right out onto
the gene keys, you could say.
Look at the form of Sweden and Finland combined. I mean, that's just
Yep. Those are the most phallic.
Yeah.
And it's
Finland is the balls.
Now, Jock, do you know why I especially gravitate to the Bach Saga is even though the Bach Saga never names Florida, it actually glorifies Florida to an extreme degree, because every aspect of the Bach Saga, every junction, every change was determined by the Gulf Stream.
Yep.
The Gulf Stream comes from the Gulf of Finland, and I wish your Bach would have taken a trip to Florida once in his life. Maybe he did, because in Lake Worth, Florida, where I came from, I'm in South Carolina right now, and where my bookstore is Lake Worth, Lake Worth, Florida, which has the highest concentration of Finnish people outside of Finland. Lake Worth, Florida.
But where is Philadelphia located in regards to Florida?
Philadelphia is up north by New York. It's northeast.
I know. I know that there was, during 1600 there was a lot of Finnish people colonizing.
Yeah, and Minnesota too.
In Philadelphia specific, that was called like Nya Sverige or New Sweden, but they mostly sent Finnish people because they were like robust, they couldn't handle the natives there.
So the unofficial reason, now supposedly the Finnish just came there for the weather and the sailing opportunities in Lake Worth, Florida, which is where Palm Beach is, by the way. So Lake Worth is just the unfancy way of saying Palm Beach. So Palm Beach is the fancy island where Donald Trump lives and Epstein and not to group those guys in together. I do not.
Yeah, might as well.
I don't. But those guys all live there. Palm Beach. Well, right across the canal is Lake Worth, where all the Finnish people live. The Finnish. So why is this significant? Because right there is where the Gulf Stream comes closest to land. So the Gulf Stream crosses the Atlantic and comes right closest to Florida, precisely where the Finnish, I know we've talked about this before, Andy and Dan, about the Gulf Stream coming into Florida, almost touching land right there, because the Bahamas are like a choke point where the Gulf Stream squeezes between the Bahamas and Florida. And right there, you have Lake Worth, Florida. Now, the Gulf Stream then goes around Florida, and it actually originates in the Gulf of Mexico, which I wish you or Bach would have known this. St. Petersburg, Florida. St. Petersburg, Florida is almost exactly where the Gulf Stream originates. So you have the Gulf Stream going from St. Petersburg, Florida, to St. Petersburg, Finland, which used to be Finnish territory. Now it's Russian St. Petersburg, but before it was St. Petersburg, that was Finnish land. So Gulf to Gulf, Finland to Florida, St. Petersburg to St. Petersburg.
And how far away from Palm Beach is the Bach Tower and all that?
It's right in between the two places I was just talking about. So Palm Beach, so Lake Worth is right. If this is Florida, right? If this is the peninsula of Florida, this is the East Coast. Lake Worth is right here. Okay. And then St. Petersburg is up here, up a little bit and on the other coast. Well, Bach Tower is pretty much right in between them. Bach with the B-O-K. Now, the other place on the planet where we have a place called Bach Tower, B-O-K, I think it's in Alabama. It's in an anomalous location that they call the center of the universe.
What?
Because it's a place, there's a tower, it's a banking tower called B-O-K.
What's the name?
Center of the Universe, Alabama, Bach, B-O-K Tower. And
my God.
It's this place where you can like clap or shout and your voice is canceled out.
I've heard of that.
It's this anomalous place. It doesn't matter whether it's built into the concrete, whatever, it happens. And it's right in front of the Bach Tower, B-O-K. So that's
look
right.
that up. Juan, you looking that up? Let's get that up on the screen.
Yeah, I can't pull it up because Narco.
Here, I'll stop.
Narco's messing it up for us, man. But yeah, I've seen this. You posted this on your Instagram, Narco, a little bit ago. It's like at a university or something like that.
Yep,
okay. I remember you posting something about this.
It says Oklahoma.
Yep. No, do you guys know what Oklahoma means, by the way? Just to cut in, like I'm very
bring it on.
Ejaculatory with this information.
That's all in the same theme.
The Oklahoma. You have oak. Okay, but oak means red in Native American. Okla, like okra.
Yeah.
Red ochre.
Ochre.
The red ochre. So okla, and then homa is like homo or human. Homa. So the red people. Oklahoma. The red people. Look it up. Oklahoma means red people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this is the center of the universe, marked by a worn concrete circle. approximately 30 inches in diameter. In the middle, overall, the center is a little more than feet. When a person stands in the center, somehow whatever they say will hear it echo while everyone around won't hear the echo. What?
Wow.
Yep.
And of course, you notice that it was made with 13 bricks.
And
there's some interesting ley line.
That that tower that you see is the Bach Tower. B-O-K Tower.
It's got little people and a little homunculus on it, bro. Yeah.
Interesting.
Got a pyramid and a boat on top.
A pyramid and a boat on top with a ton of people underneath.
I don't know if it's a boat or not, but
I mean, dude, it looks. Hey, you know,
what else could it be?
It looks very similar.
They got
it's never gonna look exactly the same.
They got one white dude on there.
Yeah,
one. It's Lemminkainen.
That's Narco
Somebody
Longo
probably
right
colored it in like that. They're like, hey, one of them should be white.
That's Oklahoma in 2030.
The diversity thing.
But now Jock, if Jock has never seen Bach Tower, Florida, I'd love to show him that.
Yeah, pull that up.
So he's on the loop.
If you don't mind, while you're at it.
Oh, and by the way, the Tulsa or Tula tribe, Tulsa and Tula, the tribes that those names would have came from around that area.
Oh. So the story of this tower is that
Isengard.
It's built on
Iron Mountain. Like Tolkien had Iron Mountains.
Dude,
where the dwarves lived. Oh, do we have some gravy?
So much gravy here.
Yeah.
We got the juice, bro. We got the juice. But check, this is the inside of it. Now, you got the star here. Again,
What's in the middle?
Very Masonic.
Yeah.
It's like trees coming out the sides.
What's in the middle of the star? It looks like sacred symbolism.
Let's see if we can see it here.
Like a flower of life almost.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like flower of life, maybe.
Could be.
Oh, a waffle.
A straight line.
A waffle.
It's a Lego My Ego situation.
There we go.
That's where they make the Sunday waffles.
Got the what is that animal?
But as Jock was saying, look at all the greenery and the stuff like that. That's probably where a lot of the symbolism is, the flowers and everything. The
what if that's
cross behind the star?
What if that's a way to manipulate reality? Lego My Ego, and they've been putting this in front of us this whole time. Right?
Well, that is interesting because it's a grid. It's not a flower of life. It's a grid. And both Longo and I thought it was the flower of life from a distance. It's quite the opposite.
Lego My
It
Ego,
it also looks like the legendary symbol, the production company, Legendary.
Yeah.
There's that. It's
the film company.
But the legendary one is like a Celtic knot, but it's very similar to that.
Got all these animals. Got a cock here, yeah. A dodo bird or something. Got a ram.
Wow.
A fox.
Rabbits.
Looks very possibly astrological.
Well, there is an astrological work.
A sundial
on the outside. There's a sundial with the signs of the zodiac. So it's a functioning astrological calendar,
right?
And hour and minute clock.
And on the door has an engraving.
Oh God,
this is unreal.
Scenes of Genesis.
It looks like
you want to know what I've been finding out digging into stuff like this? That's a solid gold door. They tell people in any place like this that it's a brass door. This is a brass door, so that no nuts go and try and saw it off and take it for themselves. For example, there's entire ships sunk off the coast of Florida that are labeled as copper ore, right?
Look at all
that people go down on and search and dig for, and
it's like
solid gold.
They're gold? What?
Now, I'm not saying I know for sure this door is gold, but there's a chance that it's gold and that they say that it's.
I mean, if you're gonna build this, look at this. If you're gonna go into that much intricate detail, I mean, you're already balling out, right, with this big tower that you have, your little wizard tower that you have. Why not just ball out and make the door gold? I mean, look at this whole thing. Look at it. Yeah. And then look at this. And so the story goes that it's built on Iron Mountain, and there's an anomaly on this mountain where allegedly it was the crash place, a crash site. And look at the sundial right here, a crash site of a meteorite. and that the local indigenous people worshipped this site because of its magnetic properties. Now there's an anomaly where cars go up the hill backwards. The local school, their mascot is the Casper the Ghost. So they got like a ghost mascot.
You've also, it's the iron oxide in the ground is where you get Iron Mountain from. So
and this dude is buried here, bro.
Yeah.
Right here.
Interesting, you have a lake there too.
It's a moat around the tower. It's a moat.
And there are the gnomes of Bach Tower. So there's a story of, look at this. We haven't ever seen this before, Narco.
It's the Robel Tower, perhaps.
The Robel Tower.
And the guy who made this, his name is Edward Bach, by the way. Jock. B-O-K.
But it's interesting. A lot of the original like Templars is said to flee to America in 1800 when the Vasa dynasty fell in the same time.
He was Dutch.
Yeah, and the Dutch, they were very, close to the Swedes also.
Yeah. And now another thing here, Juan, why do they put the scenes of Genesis on this tower? Well, because Florida's the Garden of Eden. But another point is that is that if you raise the sea level on Florida by, I think, 50 meters, you raise the sea level on Florida, all of peninsular Florida is going to disappear, except for the little hill that tower is standing on. So all of Florida disappears, and then that little dot that's left, an island that would be left, would have this tower at the very, very tippy top. So meaning after a biblical flood, only this little point with a tower would be sticking up out of the water in Florida. And thus you have the scenes of Genesis and all of the scenes of Noah's Ark etched onto this.
Well, they knew about the rising of the sea levels and all of this. It's also embedded into the book Saga and that kind of mythology.
Look at when they were building it. Look at that.
Yeah.
Bach Tower construction.
Yeah, the parallels are very, very.
Oh, here, I've got a picture for you. Can I show you guys this?
Yes, yeah, you can share your screen now.
Have you guys seen the Carnival, Assyria?
The Carnival what?
The Carnival. It's a less known HBO series about.
No.
Carnival.
The Carnival. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, about the gypsies, man. The traveling circus. Absolutely.
And they are like remnants of these Templars, but they are like those scary people going around telling stories, fortune tellers. And then you have like Satan embodied, or this dark character being this priest.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that show, dude. I was much younger when I watched that show.
Yeah, but it's worth looking into. There's something there with the Templars and the sort of this battle against the Catholics, and I think it's very interesting.
What do we got? Oh my God! So this is back in time. If it was under 50 meters.
That's wild. Now if you continued to raise this, foot by foot, meter by meter, these other islands would disappear. This one up here possibly might reduce to a speck, but right here on this ridge you have Iron Mountain, which certainly would be the last piece of land sticking out of peninsular Florida, and that's why they built that tower there. Just in case, just in case those waters go back up, it's almost an instruction manual to mankind. It's a type of Georgia guidestone. There's not really instructions, but there's the history and all the timekeeping apparatus man would need to get back on track, etc. So that's one
That's
interpretation
really interesting.
of the Bach.
Definitely
Saga.
Florida would be very susceptible to flooding, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's so flat. So
If they follow this Gulf Stream down here, they're like, it's paradise. And then the fall comes. Holy shit.
It's so
another
different.
Ragnarok.
It's so different if you compare to like Sweden, who has been under the ice. So we have land, the land is still like moving up.
Yes.
So even if the sea is rising, the land rises faster.
Yeah. Now, do you know what's special about Gotland or Gothenburg, Sweden, and Helsinki is that these places still have their limestone. So how can we test that the Bach Saga is true, and you can verify it geographically? Is that the islands below Helsinki and in and around Gotland, Sweden, still have their limestone up until the bedrock. So there's not any exposed bedrock, is what I'm saying. So the glaciers did not carve those areas out.
Wow.
Meaning, and you see this water line right here, where up here at the panhandle of Florida, the water line has not changed very much. Well, right there is where all glaciers would have been stopped dead in their tracks. Why? Because in this crest, you have the most highest magnitude pumping of freshwater springs on the planet, meaning the water coming out of this Gulf of Mexico, this is where the Gulf Stream comes from, by the way, is the spring water of Florida, which is fixed at 72 degrees, no matter what. Even if it bumps into ocean water, if it bumps into swamp water, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, it is stuck there. Some say 68, but that's like a cold spring with no sunlight. But once it comes to the surface, 72 degrees, that is what melts the ice, prevented the ice from touching any of the Gulf of Mexico, any of the glaciers from disturbing the Caribbean. And this is why I maintain Florida as a Garden of Eden. Now, of course, it's not the Garden of Uden. It's not the Garden of Uden or Odin. But in terms of a safety, a safe haven of humanity, from which philosophy and arts and various types of produce and, high degree of genetic manipulation in terms of fruits, animals. You want to talk about the Sphinx?
Old ass people.
Tall ass people, yes. Tall people.
Oh, I said old fucking farts.
Yeah, old people. That's it.
Said a high level of humanity, but it's like the capital of old ass people.
Yeah, not modern Florida I'm talking about. But this is a Garden of Eden in terms of, if you're making a garden, what's the first thing you do? You either choose or you produce the flattest land you have, meaning you choose the flattest plot and the most irrigated, and then you plant accordingly. Well, that's Florida, and it has been for at least 30 million years, believe it or not. So, blah, blah, blah.
And also, with that said, if you want to come join the cult of Dr. Longo, you can email us, drlongo@gmail.com, and submit your applications. We're only going to be choosing the strongest, smartest people. So,
most beautiful.
When the Ragnarok comes. If you have blonder hair than Narco Longo, please shoot us an application.
No fake highlights.
Damn, man. There you go,
Redheads
Juan.
are royalty.
Juan's getting the hang of it.
Exactly, bro. We have to keep right. We're at the on the phallus of America. We have to keep this genetic bloodline alive, whatever that means. But also, doesn't America come from something that means feathered serpent or dragon or something?
Amaruka is the it comes from all the Mesoamerican gods and everything. The Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, this plumed serpent, the land of the plumed serpent. And so, I mean, 10 years ago, I was saying that and going, wow, so it's aliens. And, but now with the Bach Saga and everything
It's
that Dr. Narco
Aryan.
Longo has given us, like we have a lot of different reference points to see how, and Dan pointed out recently to me in just a very plain way, it's such an important point to make, that when you look at the early stories of Genesis, you're looking at a populated planet. You're looking at already established places and kingdoms. And so, I mean, we have to really put that into context when we're thinking about what's mystical and what's human and what's part of our history and what we can actually untwist and lay out flat for everybody. Because a lot of people kind of get on this train where, oh, we're never going to know what really happened. I think we all are here to stand attest to that, to say, no, we can definitely untangle this and figure it out. It's just going to take a lot of, uncomfortable history and a lot of deep research.
Just spending less time at Starbucks across the board. The planet.
About Dunkin' Donuts.
I don't know.
It's all about time.
Man. Absolutely.
And where to put the mind, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to choose an area. Like you, Florida in this case, it's very nice to get like an expert on a specific area.
Well, I don't know if I'm an expert yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't say expert.
Yeah,
no, but like for me, I hone in on like Sweden, and then it's a small country, and it's getting easy to track because it's very small, especially throughout like a couple of 100 years. It's quite easy to grasp. And if you size down, instead of just looking all over the fucking world to know everything, it's easier to start where you like live, for example.
Yeah, walking through local graveyards and looking at last names like a creeper, That's how we do it.
Yeah.
Look at your own backyard.
And I will take expert now that I think about it, because every Florida expert that I've met has been, a bucket of retard, essentially.
He's an expert.
Man. I have such a hard time trying to find trying to rub up against like actual historians and ask questions to them, because even like the broad premise of my question before I even get to it, they're going to reject, it's like so it's hard. You have to kind of become experts yourselves. And it does take a lot of research, and it's hard. I wouldn't call myself an expert either at all. It's just kind of every day you just have to keep learning more and not put your ego into it, Like I try to disprove what I think, maybe it is aliens. I don't know.
You just don't know that you're an expert yet.
Or maybe it's all fake and gay, and it's
That's
neither.
fair. That's fair.
I'm just thinking about the scene when Bilbo is supposed to sign that he's a burglar. Have you seen the talking? Yeah. The dwarf say he's an expert. You misheard it, but
Well, sometimes sometimes you don't have an occupation until you accepted the challenge, So sometimes the challenge is the occupation. So you don't. I understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well put.
Exactly.
Sometimes it'd be like this. Look, sometimes I'll be like, all right, then keep your secrets then. I don't want to know anyways, bro. So I think
let me share one last thing that I found. My friend Kaylin from the Strange Neighborhood podcast showed me something, and it's that same book I showed earlier, but this part is really interesting. It says the Canaanites or Cabals have been deemed parents of the Atlantes and Africans. They were skillful, powerful, and wicked, inventing agriculture and arts, building cities, blah, 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 while the Sethians invented astronomy, letters, and dwelt in tents. If the American Atlantes were antediluvian, they must have sprung from the Atlantes Canaanites, kin of Moses. And it goes on down here to say the giants dwelt in Talo Todo, the world Talo of the Hindus, where we find the Toltecs. And we're talking Hindus, we're talking the Vedas, home of the North Pole. Therefore, America, called also Atala, and once sunk in the waves like the Atlantis of the Greek, whose Atlantes were also giants of powerful men. The egregori have been deemed the Titans of the Greeks, and Atlas was a Titan. Although gigantic nations existed in America, the Telegas, Toltecas, Caribs,
oh yeah,
Caribbeans, the oak
Chihuahuas.
jaws, yeah, being often such. The term giant must always be understood to refer to powerful, perverse men. The name of Raphaim and Nephilim appear unknown in, I don't have the next page, but yeah, this book is pretty interesting. The name of it again is
who runs the NFL? Quick thought here. Referees, refs.
Right. Yeah. The American nations or outlines of the generals.
And look at that guy's last name, Raffinesque. Raffinesque. Yeah,
Constantine Samuel Raffinesque. Yeah, man. So
interesting,
that's an interesting book.
And real quick, I because I just did an episode this week. I released it yesterday or what day is it? Sunday, Friday. And I talked about how, right, these men of renown inserting themselves into the daughters of men. Well, what if it was like possession and not in a literal sense? What if they were possessed by the Nephilim and not?
It just said egregore, and egregore, and egregore is a thought process.
Yeah, a thought form.
It's a negative thought form, right?
But it seems to be like calling a certain people egregore too. And when you think about the mixing of races, this is also the Romeo and Juliet story in a way.
Yeah.
So we're talking about admixture. I mean, and who knows how deep the story goes, because we know that they tell these symbolic stories in layers. Yes. So you look at Robert Sepper's work about like Cro-Magnon man and things like that, and the actual admixture of our modern man and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting how these stories seem to be layers of the same thing over and over again throughout time.
They're just stories, and I think that's I think we're here to peel those stories apart and actually find the truth. But again, that's going to take a little bit of time.
Grit.
Speak for yourself, Juan. I'm in the fast lane over here, bro.
All right. Hey, dude. To each their own, right? Different strokes for different folks. We know that.
I'm on the highway to Helsinki over here.
Yeah, I like it. So hey, before we wrap up,
to Helsinki.
I'm almost at the finish line, you could say.
Oh.
So before we wrap up everything, I don't want to forget, I'm putting this out on my birthday on May 11th. And Narco, I was wondering if you could kind of
happy birthday,
give us any astrological information for what we should be expecting in this time period.
Man.
Hit him with the truth, Longo.
How bad is it for me? May 11th.
I'm probably gonna have to let you down in terms of like the greater movements of the planets, because I have not been keeping up with it. I've been in my van for the last couple of weeks, like traveling for Florida, filming stuff.
Like a giant, one of those traveling men. Yes.
Yeah. Charlataning my way across the Dawn coast of Florida, selling snake oil and such. But no, but
uncovered another portal.
Yeah, we've found that portal. But I can tell you about just Taurus in general.
Sure.
Taurus is a time of fertility. In the Bach Saga, they say they would try to have their kids around
in the vår.
In when?
The vår.
The vår?
The war.
Like war?
Yes.
Okay.
But war is spring in Swedish.
Oh, okay. Like March. Beautiful. Yes. March flipped over.
So this is how we flip that, yeah.
Mars, Maritime. Mars rules Aries. And in the Bach Saga, they explicitly say they tried to have their men born as Aries. Now, they go as far as to say all the children being born in March. Now, that doesn't mean Aries specifically, but I'm coming out on my opinion, my informed
You're coming out?
Astrological opinion. Yes, Juan, you can set off your fireworks.
The blouse didn't give it away.
Set off the fireworks you've been keeping for the occasion. But sorry, my assistant's being fake and gay in the background.
Nice.
But so March, you have Mars. I forgot what I was going to say, but at some point in time, I'm gonna say they wanted their women, their girls, their baby making girls to be born in March, not March, right after March, Taurus. So Taurus makes the best girlfriend. The most fertile women come from Taurus. Taurus is the most feminine sign. It rules the crescent moon, especially the upturned crescent moon, which is like a bowl, like
the bull's horns.
For a bowl, yes, like the bull's horns, but it's also for receiving a bowl, a bowl. So bowl, Taurus. I've talked in a couple different shows I've done about how the Phoenicians, Venetians, Romans, Greeks, whoever was getting in a ship and crossing the Atlantic to come to the Gulf, the Caribbean, Florida, whatever, they would wait until Saturn was in the sign of Taurus. So if that would make sense, if they were going to the land of the crescent moon, the land of fertility, a fertile crescent, which in both roots of either word in that phrase, fertile and crescent, are both ruled by the sign Taurus. Taurus. So Taurus is also where it rules eating, right? And it rules like bowls. All they do is eat all day, right? A cow eats nonstop, start to end of the day almost. And this is where you get the word Tor. So I learned this a couple days ago. You guys will like this. If you're ever having trouble spelling the word restaurant, okay. If you know your astrology, you'll never have to, scratch your head again, because to tar, to tar, Taur is to eat. Taurus. So it's not Tor like Tor. We're not saying this is Tor. However, in the runic system, the Tor rune is associated with Taurus. And this is why it's especially associated with thunder and big people, big, tall people. The Tor rune, which rules the sign of Taurus. So, but blah, blah, blah. If you ever need to spell restaurant, you can spell it restar. Ant. So, Taurus goes right there. Taur. So it rules eating, fertility, fruit, springtime, blooming, growth, flowers, of course. So what else is Taurus rule, Jeff? Rules money, rules income. So it's
stubborn.
Silver, stubbornness. The people are, if you want to get into personality traits, the people are stubborn. They're like a cow. You can't push them. But if you enrage a Taurus, Tauruses have the worst temper. Because once they get going, it's a lot of momentum to stop, a raging bull.
Oh, you're a Taurus, Dr. Longo?
No, I'm a Sagittarius.
Okay.
I'm the Taurus, and I can definitely vouch for that, and so can my wife.
They're both.
It takes me a long time to get there, but yeah, a lot of momentum there.
Yeah. But Tauruses are great at earning money. They like to earn everything they make.
They hoard.
They like their things. Now look at Juan. Juan's also a Taurus, so they keep a lot of useless shit around the house.
A lot of things.
That we do, yes.
I love my things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, I've tried to disavow a lot of things,
Yeah.
But it's just like when you think about like, am I gonna need it in the future? And then like something goes off, like, oh, I'm gonna need this. And my wife can vouch for that. Whenever she's needed the most random thing, I just so happen to have it in like my bottomless bag of curiosities, and I'll just like dig in there and take it out and like boom. But yeah, she makes fun of me for that. But yeah, I am definitely a hoarder. So
now I think Dan's a Gemini.
Is that correct,
if I
Dan?
remember correctly. Now,
Aquarius.
Jock, what are you?
Early.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yes.
Like, do you know why? Can I tell you why?
Yes.
Because everyone's name is determined by their astrological sign. Now, not everyone likes to hear that, because they say, "Oh no, I'm named for Johnny Cash, or I'm named for Betty Smith, or blah, blah, blah. Well, that may be the how, but it's not the why. Jock, Aquarius rules lightning and electricity and neon lights and bright, explosion, cyber electricity sparks, right? Sparks. Jock is the shock, from electric shock. You have your name. My name, Sagittarius, comes from Sagittarius too, and I could do anyone's name if they'd like, but
interesting.
Yeah,
that is really cool.
I never heard that before. So
everyone's name comes from there. Everything is. Sorry.
Yeah. I was commenting the cap of Joan. Is it like the hermit?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is the hermit. Yep. Lantern.
Nice. Nice.
A Taurus hermit.
Yes, I am a hermit. I am a very not anti-social, but I am a homebody. I mean, that's a Taurus.
Homebody.
Yeah, man.
So,
thrive at home. It's nice.
Yeah.
When you think everyone else is an idiot, you stay at home, right?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, this last cruise did it for me. I think I'm
that must
with
have
people.
been, yeah, that must have been something
for a while. Yeah, absolutely, dude.
Hey guys, I gotta bounce. I got a show at 10, and Roman was supposed to start it, and you know how that goes. So
shout out to Roman. Hey, I think we're gonna wrap up anyway. If you guys are cool with that,
I gotta bounce.
I gotta run anyway. I got a lot more gardening to do today. So
this was fun.
Dan, Yake, Juan, Dr. Narco Longo, thank you guys so much for hanging out on my birthday party celebration podcast. This was really fun.
Happy birthday.
Into some of my favorite shit.
Yeah,
I
happy
love
birthday.
you guys. Thanks, guys. And
Happy
I appreciate
birthday.
you all very much. So tell everybody where they can find you.
TJOJP.com. TJOJP.com.
Longo.
Rising from the ashes.
Okay, everybody, just all at once.
Old World Florida on YouTube and old_world_Florida on Instagram.
Beautiful. Yeah. Dan the man, where can we find you?
Rising from the Ashes podcast. I was doing a thing called Portals of Dan on Spotify and whatnot, but I'm moving that to the Rising from the Ashes feed. So
nice.
There's going to be some new shows on there, Ebbs and Flows, which is a story. There's about 4 of us, and we go through the Book of Genesis, and then the 88, where we go through the 88 constellations, and then there's going to be a bunch more stuff coming to that feed. So go check that out.
Cool. Yake, where can they find you, man?
I'm hidden. Now, Jock or Joakim Häggström on YouTube. That's what I do.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Juan, it's been real.
Yeah, TJOJP.com. You know where to find me.
Hell yeah, man. All right, everybody.
Appreciate you, man. Happy birthday.
Yeah,
thank you. Showing up.
Happy birthday,
Thanks,
Andy.
everybody, for listening. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, vegetarian. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay? I mean...